Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Soul Rising podcast. I am Amanda McCoy Flanagan. We are all in on love, loss, and connection here. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. Welcome back. If you've seen the show before, really glad to have you. Today, we have my friend, my wonderful friend, Chris Janssen. I'm so happy to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here. With the long hair, longer hair than last time I saw you.
Known each other for a long time, and Chris, she'll tell you, but from California, moved to Colorado. We met here in recovery, and now she's back in California, but she's written a couple books. One is just like hitting the charts like gangbusters. She's doing so good. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Chris right now, and then we're going to jump into our conversation. Chris Janssen, MABCC, is a results coach in performance and mindset, and award-winning author of the USA Today bestseller, Grace Yourself, How to Show Up for the Sober Life You Want, an Amazon bestseller, Living All In, How to Show Up for the Life You Want. Chris has worked with hundreds of creatives, soldiers, entrepreneurs, and small businesses internationally to close the gap between where they are and where they want to be. Her training includes working with Tony Robbins on his top-tier coaching team. As a board-certified coach with a master's in counseling psychology and 20-plus years experience, Chris excels in helping high-achieving perfectionists navigate performance pressure, rewrite narratives, and overcome self-sabotage. Chris's work has been featured in Newsweek, USA Today, Thrive Global, Simplify Magazine, Wrapped Interviews, Publishers Weekly, Brains Magazine, and the Jesus Calling podcast. A California native, Chris lives with her husband since '95. His name is Scott. They like to ski, golf, be with their horses, and adventure outside. They have 3 children who are now thriving young adults. And Chris, it's so good to see you. Thank you so much for jumping in here last minute. I had a guest cancel, and I'm like, Christ. And I'm like, Chris just put out a book.
Call Chris.
Put out her podcast. Yeah, so thank you for being here.
Plus, she wanted to get on and see how you've been because she misses you.
Yeah, I miss you too. So tell us about your book. Well, I just want to let everybody know this is kind of an uncanny coincidence. You know, we kind of I don't think you believe in coincidences either. I met Chris in recovery. I was actually the membership director for this clubhouse that we both went to. And I got an email that a new member signed up, Chris Janssen. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to call Chris, thinking that you were a man. So,
everybody does. I get a lot of Dear Mr. Janssen emails.
Like, you don't know me. I know that you don't know me. Don't pretend like you know me. So I call Chris and she answers, and I was like, oh, hi. We start talking, and she says that she just wrote a book. And I was like, oh, really? I just wrote a book. I'm like, what's the name of your book?
What's the name of your book?
She's like, Living All In. And I was like, no way. I was like, I just wrote a book, and it's called Trust Yourself to Be All In. And we couldn't believe it. And I have them both here, and I want to show you guys.
Oh,
this is
yay.
Chris's book, her first book. Amazing. So good. And mine. So all in. And
And they match too. The blues match, I think. I always thought
flowers,
that was cool.
Right? Yeah. Yours, flowers, just so cool. And I was like, I got to meet this lady. She's pretty awesome. Just from our conversation, the first conversation we had. I love you from the start. So tell us about your new book, why you wrote it, why you picked the title.
Yeah, so the title is Grace Yourself, and the subtitle is How to Show Up for the Sober Life You Want. And I love the subtitles of my books because how to show up for the life you want and the sober life you want. As you know, it's easy to show up for life when it's easy. And how do we show up when it's hard? We know it's a good idea to think positive thoughts, just keep going, all those things we hear in the self-help world. And at the same time, how do you do that? So both my books are very, very simple, a lot of fundamentals of just things we maybe even learned as kids and forgot. Like these tools for how to keep going, how to show up and not numb out, not check out when life gets hard. Because pain is natural, and I think we choose suffering and we choose to stay stuck in misery, right? And we don't need to. So my books and my coaching too, I love working with people on how to do that, right? And how to embrace the stuff.
Yeah, embrace exactly, because it's gonna suck sometimes.
Yeah. And our son was in the Army. He's in the 82nd Airborne in the military, and that's an Army saying, embrace the suck.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
No,
So
where that came from. I've heard people say.
I've actually never said that on a podcast or in a book or anything. I'm like, yeah, embrace the suck. That's
You're with me. You're allowed to.
the Army. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I love the how-to
Yeah.
piece, the action, because just
Yes.
like coming to recovery, right? When I got to the rooms of recovery, it was like, okay, so I see you guys aren't drinking. I see that you guys are like living like a good life, but how? Tell me how.
Right.
Well, tell us how your book, if you want to talk about your last one, how you do that.
Yeah. So I'll just say the second one, the reason it's called How to Show Up for the Sober Life You Want is because I entered recovery in 2007. I was addicted to alcohol. I'm a sober person, but that never played a part in my coaching, or I had my sober community. It was, I wasn't ashamed to tell other people. It's just that I have a really solid sobriety community that is anonymous, and I didn't, especially getting sober back in 2007, not everybody understands. So this second book, I'm always clear on these interviews that I'm not a sobriety expert. I'm not a sobriety coach. I'm not an addiction expert. I'm a life coach. I have a master's in counseling and psychology. But in the book, I share my story with alcohol addiction in order to present the coaching tools and say, I was addicted to alcohol. Here's how these tools helped me. And here's how you can apply them to any stronghold that's keeping you stuck. And, I think we're all experts at serving the person we once were. So I'm an expert at my own story. I'm not a addiction expert, though.
I love that, serving the person we once were, and that your book is applicable even if you don't have an addiction problem. These tools can serve you across the board. So you said choose to stay stuck twice. So I want to focus on that a little bit. Why do we stay stuck, do you think?
Well, it depends on the client, but I think I'll speak for myself for this one, since the book shares my story. There's a comfort to not changing, right? I'm gonna pick my little dog up.
Right.
He just had surgery, so he's got a little donut on.
Tank. Oh,
You're fine.
Right. Tank is a three-legged dog.
He's a little tripod. So I think we and you know this from recovery, even if it's not addiction, in any pattern that it has become harmful or unwanted that we want to get rid of, we can, even if we don't want it, we can still be comfortable with it. And change is uncomfortable, and we need to get out of our comfort zone if we want to grow and change. And so I think sometimes we can even form a sense of significance around where we're at, right? Whatever that is. Like, we've all heard people that say, you meet them and then the first 10 minutes they're telling you they're labeled, and they're not great labels. And so there's this, and I don't think any of us do that knowingly. It's just that if we want to make a change, we have to change the neuroplasticity, get out of our comfort zone. And that's part of getting unstuck. So I do think we choose to stay where we're at, or we can choose to move forward.
So like, what it sounds like to me is maybe creating a new identity, one that you don't associate with in a negative way. And maybe it's not even true. I feel like sometimes I play catch up with myself. Like, I grow, but I still think, because I'm just so used to being that old person, I still think I have certain qualities and traits. And I'm like, but wait a minute, I haven't acted like that. I haven't done that in a really long time.
When we change, we're not the person we used to be. So if someone's telling you you are, that's BS. Right? Like,
Or you yourself are telling you.
Or you yourself with that other person. Yeah. That crazy mind of ours. That's right.
So you're a self-sabotage. You focus on self-sabotage and perfectionism and shame.
Yeah. So as a life coach, a lot of my clients over the years have ended up being that. And I think that is naturally because we're experts at serving the person we once were. And I was a rigid thinker. I was a perfectionist as a child and a young woman. I think that had a lot to do with my alcohol addiction. And so I also think people who are very high growth and high performers are the type of people that hire life coaches. So that's part of it, right? So my coaching friends and I, we have people who are high growth as clients, right? So, coaching's about what works, not what hasn't worked in the past.
Yes.
So we're working with people who are hiring someone and say, I want you to hold me accountable. I want to move forward. I want to get from here to there. And they're willing to do the work to do that. And so I think that when, there's a difference between a perfectionism and a high growth individual where like a high growth or high achiever, we will do what it takes to get our goal. If one strategy doesn't work, we tweak the strategy and keep going. We don't ditch the outcome though. Perfectionism and rigid thinking can tempt us to just toss it up and throw it in the trash can and ditch the whole outcome. Was like, I wasn't meant to do that. That doesn't work. If we're talking about alcohol, it's like, oh, I already blew it. I might as well go on a bender. Or if I had one, I might as well have four. Whatever. That type of thinking is when we're setting ourselves up for self-sabotage. When we don't stay in tweaking the strategy, we don't realize that many, many things don't work on the way to getting our goal. More things don't work than do work on the way to getting our goal. And the idea is to just keep shifting the strategy and keep moving forward. If we have a perfectionistic mindset, we might plateau or move backward or quit, like when we're just 2 millimeters from the goal because it's not perfect or it's not what we expected, right? So coaches are always working with people to push through that 2 millimeter shift to the goal. Don't ditch the outcome, just tweak the strategy and keep going. It doesn't have to be perfect on your way to getting the goal.
So what did you call the high achiever or high success? What did you call it?
Like a high growth minded person.
High growth minded person. I don't like that better than calling myself a perfectionist because you know me, I don't ditch much.
I don't think you could have achieved what you've achieved as a mother, a founder of the Clubhouse, an author, a coach, doing workshops. You couldn't do that as a perfectionist because, okay, all those things I just named for you, has any of the planning for any of that been perfect or gone as you expected it to?
No.
So, but you kept going and you're like, okay, you didn't ditch the outcome. You kept going towards your goals. So you're not.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that, everybody. Yeah. So think about that. Are you still that perfectionist that maybe you once were when you were younger and maybe you didn't believe in yourself as much? I'd say high growth individuals probably have a higher sense of self-worth or self-esteem, maybe? What's the difference?
I mean, we could certainly, as perfectionists, set ourselves up for low self-worth, so that can be dangerous and part of self-sabotage. I mean, we don't want to heap shame on ourselves and say, just because this isn't working the way I thought it was going to, or it didn't meet my expectation, that it's that has nothing to do with our worth.
No, it doesn't. But I think a lot of people think it does, right?
They may attach it.
Yeah, our worth is attached to what we
to action, right?
We produce.
Right.
What about the people who? And I think this was maybe part of my old perfectionism was the moving the bar higher. Do you find some clients do that? Like they're just about to reach their goal, but they don't really ever allow themselves to. It's like, well, I'm almost there. Now I'm going to raise it higher so that I can never actually achieve that thing and keep myself in a state of striving.
Well, I think that's part of growth. It's super necessary to stop and celebrate before you move it higher. So I make clients do that.
How do you celebrate? How do you make
it can be so simple. Okay, stop what you're doing, put your hand back here and do this. It can be the smallest little action to acknowledge what you just did before you're just often running to the next thing. There's nothing wrong with that, though. That's part of being high growth. That's great. It's just you've got to stop and celebrate the milestones. My goodness.
Yeah, because we're allowed to feel good about ourselves. I love that you stress that in your coaching, because it's so important to just stop and smell the roses and say, look what I did. Right? Even if it's for 5 minutes, to just be there, just to relish in it, allow it to come wash over you and just be like, I did it. And to be proud of yourself.
Right. Well, and know your why too. Like some of us aren't doing it to be proud of ourselves. Some of us are doing it, like maybe it's our higher power. As a Christian, we do things for the kingdom, but know what that is. It doesn't, and not that being proud of yourself is that that's awesome. But just know what it is. Are you doing this to serve another person? Are you doing it to be proud of yourself? Are you doing it to serve God's kingdom? What is it? And then acknowledge that and celebrate it, and celebrate the messiness and imperfection of it as well.
Yes. And I think you can, I just want to be clear, I'm not just doing it to be proud of myself. I think you can do all three of those. What I'm trying to say is it's okay to be proud of yourself, while personally for me, I don't think that's enough of a motivation, or else I probably wouldn't do it. Like you have a soul calling. We have a soul calling to be doing work, right?
Right. That's right.
And to be of service, which is really service to the world, service to God, service to higher power, spirit, universe, whatever you want to call it. It's just a push inside of us, that spirit inside of us that's pushing us forward to do something, whatever that thing is. It doesn't have to look like what I do or what you do, but for listeners, whatever that thing is.
Exactly. You and I know because we're in service. So when you're in service, you're not in your head. The quickest way to get out of your head and your own problems is go serve someone else. The reason we feel better when we do that is because we're not focused on ourselves. We're not in our egocentric brain. And that's, I think, what we're created for, is to live in community, be in community, serve others, serve a higher purpose than just our own agenda. Yes. And so when we're operating in that, we're just going to feel better. Yeah. We have less time to have pity parties. We sit around thinking about how we messed up all the time. And that's part of that perfectionism I do talk a lot about too, is that when we are in that mindset, like in our literature, it talks about pride in reverse. When we're in a pity party and we're putting these standards on ourselves and then beating ourselves up for not reaching them, when really that wasn't even something we had control over in the first place. That's just another sense of pride. It's pride in reverse, because we're in essence saying, I know better than God how this was supposed to turn out, or I know better than the universe how this was supposed to turn out, or better than my creator how this was supposed to turn out. And so the quickest way to get out of that rut is to go be in community, go be in service, and see that you're not the only one with the problem that you're wallowing in. There's millions of people that probably have that same exact situation.
The way I talk about service too, it doesn't need to be on this big grand scale. You don't need to write books. You don't need to be a coach. You don't need to be whatever. You don't need to go out and run a marathon to show others it can be done.
You don't have to have a prison ministry. You don't,
Just small things, opening the door for somebody, smiling at somebody that's having a bad day. That's being of service. That's just the intention, I think, of trying to lift somebody up, right? Allowing that light to shine through you, and then going, and then being that around other people. I think automatically something happens. There's like an attraction. There's it's like contagious. And you have the power. You have the power to lift somebody up and out of whatever they're going through. So
you do. Yeah, we do. And when we put our attention and intention on another person, it makes a difference, and they feel it. Whether you're speaking in front of a whole group, or you're coaching one person, or you're on the phone with a friend, whatever it is, being present for that person or people, and having all your attention and intention on them is the only way that is going to serve them, because the alternative is we're thinking about what we're going to say or how we're going to coach this client or our talk that we're giving. And then we're thinking about ourselves again. And when we're thinking about ourselves instead of the person that we're serving, it just isn't going to work out. They won't receive it the way it's meant to be received in the universe. And we did have to think that way as children, like children, you have kids, you were a kid, we were kids. It's an egocentric mind.
And as a kid, that's acceptable because from 0 to 12, your brain, right?
Basic child development. Yes. And so everything happened to us. If our parent was mad, it's happening to us, right? Uh-huh. But as we grow older, we need to grow out of childish ways and realize the world isn't about us. It's not happening to us. We don't need to be thinking, what am I going to say next? And how will I relate that? And if our brain is still stuck in that childlike, egocentric way, it's just not a good way to serve somebody else, right? Because it's still going to be about us. But if we're thinking about that person, like say I'm coaching a client, if I'm completely focused on the client's outcome, they will be served. If I'm focused on how I'm going to achieve their outcome, we won't get there.
Yes.
Because now I'm focused on my coaching skills and these things, right? Like we've got to focus on the person we're serving. And like I said, that could be one client or it can be an entire audience.
So how do we trust that we're going to say what we're supposed to or needs to be said? Like, how do you get out of that? How would you help somebody shift that perception from self-perception to other perception? I guess you could
just try it and you'll see. You do it one time and it works like a charm.
Yeah, it just comes. It just comes. And then there's less anxiety, right? There's less planning. You're just present. And I think that the best stuff that's going to come out of you is going to happen in that present moment, right? They say like God is only here, like right now, right? God isn't like 2 thoughts behind you or 5 thoughts ahead of you.
It's timeless. God's timeless. Yep.
Here, right now. Mm-hmm. So, right, just to trust yourself that you're going to show up. I love it. How to show up for the life you want in your books. Where is your book? Let me see your beautiful book. I see it back there. Hold it up for us. Grace yourself. So tell us about that title. So what does that mean how do I grace myself?
Yeah. So I got the title. So my faith is Christian. So I need to preface that to say this. So the grace to me is God's grace, which is unmerited favor. As a young woman, I didn't understand that because as a rigid thinker and perfectionistic young lady, I thought I was like bracing myself all the time instead of gracing myself. Mm-hmm. So I was like, I thought I had to control everything. And when you feel that you have to control everything, it's very difficult to understand the concept of unmerited favor or God wanting to give you something that's free that you didn't earn. Because I thought, well, I'll tell you what I'm worth. Like if I don't believe I did something to earn it, then I can't receive it. And so if you don't understand grace and just accepting your creator's unmerited favor on you, then you're still in that situation. It's like playing God where you feel like, I'll tell you what I'm worth, right? Like I need to control the narrative of this. When we feel that we're in control in that way, we can't accept grace. And so for me, the title came from that, which is when I first got into recovery in 2007, that was explained to me. And that's when it changed my life because I was able to understand in this area, at least like addiction, I'm powerless and I can't get better if I continue to try using my willpower and discipline. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't figure out how I have a lot of discipline and willpower and it's working for me in other areas of life, but it wasn't working with moderating alcohol. I couldn't.
I hear you.
You get it. So I didn't. So when that was explained to me, my belief went from I'm a monster because I can't stop drinking to I'm deserving of community and recovery and sobriety because I can't stop drinking. And so the fact didn't change. I was still I was addicted to alcohol, but the meaning I attached to that fact became my belief. And that's what I help people with, is our beliefs. And what are the narratives you're attaching to the facts in your life? Because we can't change all the facts in our life. I can't change the fact that I can't drink alcohol or that I'm addicted. Like if I drink alcohol again, I will be addicted. It will go badly. I can't change that. I can change the meaning I attach to that. So I don't have to walk around believing I'm a monster because of that. I'm a beautiful person and we have beautiful recovery groups and I get to be in them because of that. That's the meaning I attach to it.
So grace means that I don't have to do anything to prove that I'm worthy of the things that come to me.
Right. You're worthy if you're addicted. You're worthy if you're not. You're worthy if you're sick. You're worthy if you're not. You're worthy if you're high growth. You're worthy if you're not. You just are worthy. Now, that's my belief because that's my faith and my spiritual belief, which I'm open about in the book. But that's what this title means. It's not about self-help in the sense that, you know, I am about standing in your power, but in this sense, it's standing in God's power.
Okay.
Because there are areas in my life, at least, where I am completely powerless and I have to rely on something outside of myself.
Rely on it for what?
Specifically, to not drink.
Yeah. But other things. So what I'm trying to get at here is I think that sometimes people think that relying on a higher power, believing in a higher power, God, whatever, things are going to be okay. Okay in the sense of good, right? I think a lot of us attach the good to things are going to be okay. You know, I've had women ask me in recovery, like when we get to the third step and it's like, you know, about that whole, why do babies die? And why is there war? If there is a God, you know, why is he making this stuff happen? And first I say, he's not, he, she, it, whatever, is not, like a lot of it is man and our own will, right? That's messing things up. And then I say, trusting in something like that doesn't mean that, you know, that things are going to work out the way that you want them to. In an ideal world, yeah, that would be great. Right? No babies would die. There would be no war. There would be no divorces. There would be no death. There would be no nothing, right? There would be no huge fire in LA that Chris's friends, unfortunately, are living through. But it doesn't, for me, and I want to hear what you think about this, for me, it's trusting that I'm going to be held. I'm going to be comforted. I'm going to be given the courage to face whatever life throws at me or whatever my soul path has chosen, however you want to look at it, whatever happens, I'm going to be able to show up, how to show up.
Well, if there's no darkness, none of us would recognize the light. If we all just lived in light and there were no fires and no death and no grief, then how would you even know that was good? Right? If you didn't have something to compare it to. So there's that. And then a lot of this is just practicing appreciation over expectation. People that are still in a childish mindset, we may tend to think that life is happening to us. Every person that looks at us funny, every fire that happens, every loved one that passes is happening to me. But it's not. It's just happening. It's life. We're human.
Yeah.
It's just happening. And so for me, the higher power part of that is, nobody ever said, it is said God is good, but we're not saying God is good and according to your own definition.
Yes.
Right? Exactly. So it's about expectation. So life is not happening to us. It's just happening. For me, I practice being on God's agenda instead of my own. that doesn't mean bad things don't happen. We live in a world where bad things happen. I think that we get to trust that we will have what we need to get through these things, like your books and my book talk about, right? Like that's where the appreciation comes in, right?
Yeah, and things might be really hard for a really long time, right? Like people that go through this fire, you know, like you might be living in a shelter for a little while. You might be eating cans of Chef Boyardee. There's tons of suffering out there. There are people who are suffering in our country, not in our country, third world country, everywhere. Israel, Gaza. I mean, like there's so much suffering right now. So the people could say, well, how is there a God? It's the inner strength. It's the inner knowing that no matter where I am, even if I'm dead, even if I die, even if I'm on the other side, right? It's very hard to explain, but I know you get it. It's like this higher, separate sort of spiritual plane of just knowing that like my soul is being taken care of, my spirit is being taken care of, even if I am extremely unhappy, uncomfortable, suffering, even if I am suffering right now. And some suffering, yeah, like you saw when you started, yeah, pain is unavoidable, suffering is optional, all that kind of stuff. But some suffering is, I personally feel, unavoidable. Some suffering is necessary, I believe, for growth. You don't have to stay in it. That's the difference.
You don't have to stay. You don't have to camp there. Yeah. Especially if it's not serving you or other people. But we have to grieve. We have to suffer. We have to go through the natural pain, which is life. We don't have to wallow in it and stay stuck in it and blame other people and feel bad about ourselves because of it. And I think, I mean, at least in my, in Christianity, like the Bible's full of examples of how things didn't go the way people or Jesus wanted them to at all. I would say to someone who asks why do bad things happen to good people, there's a lot of resources out there to answer that question. So I think that's, somebody could educate themselves on that for sure.
And very often it's in those bad things or those bad times where the enlightenment comes, where I know for me, I'm not so caught up in all the drama, all the garbage. Like I'm exposed, I meet myself in those really tough times. And that's where enlightenment happens. That's where my book was spurred from. That was where it came from. It came from my pain, and then I had
absolutely. Yes.
And I sought out wellness with therapists and recovery and all the stuff, right? So it didn't happen by me sitting by myself in my house. I took action, like you're talking about in your book. So what's some action? What are some actionable tools that you suggest people that to get out of this negative self-talk, this narrative, to flip the script?
Yeah. So get in community for one.
Community.
Don't isolate. That's action. And work on the narratives for sure. Actually write stuff down. There's prompts in the book to help you with that. But like I said before, the meaning you attach to the facts in your life, attach a better meaning that will serve you. And even if you don't believe it, write it down, practice it. The belief will come later. Sometimes we do have to act as if until the belief comes. So, but the main thing I think is community. We're not, as humans, we're not meant to survive. I mean, a human baby can't survive alone in nature. We're a species that needs other people.
Yes.
And so we don't have to be loud and proud like Amanda and I are. You can be in an anonymous group, even if you tell one person about what you're struggling with. And I'm not just talking about alcohol, just anything. Yeah. We live in a time when we have online and in-person support. We have it in prisons. We have it in the hard-to-reach places.
For so many things, not just
so many things.
Addiction, any problem that you have, there's probably a support group for.
Yeah, we have hotlines. So I think people do need to have some humility and be willing to get out of their comfort zone. And
get honest too, I guess.
And get honest and not wallow in that pride in reverse, thinking their problem is so significant that that's the one problem that there's no solution for, because that's not true. That's a big fat lie. So,
and we tell, again, to reiterate, we tell ourselves that, or people continue to tell themselves those lies because it's keeping them safe, even though it's
comfortable.
uncomfortable.
Yep, that's
that
right.
old story, even though it's not serving them and it's uncomfortable, it's painful, it's still keeping you comfortable. It's uncomfortable yet comfortable. Isn't that crazy how that?
Well, there's comfort in the discomfort for people. And it's all, it just is all patterns. None of us said, oh, I want to be addicted to something. I want to get a big old fat addiction and then have a problem. We didn't do that. It started as we were soothing something. Then it became a ritualistic soother. And it happened without us wanting it to happen, where that turned to something harmful and an addiction. Or maybe it's not an active addiction for some people, and it's just a habit that's not serving them.
Just a thought process that is just carving those
thoughts. Yeah, thoughts that aren't serving you, all of that. So just always be asking, is this behavior or thought moving me in the direction I want to go or not? Because it's going to be different for everybody. Like, we can't just take that 20 questions on the Are You an Alcoholic test that they used to give people and then know if that's not a thing. Like, it's different for everybody, right? So we've got to just be asking, if I continue this thought or behavior or this language I'm using internally or externally, is it moving me in the direction I want to go? And if it's not, we can change that.
So you used the word neuroplasticity at the beginning of the show. And so do you believe that we can override these thoughts and change these things, change our neuroplasticity with thought alone? Or do you sometimes recommend that your clients go seek other somatic treatments that rewire, like, EMDR or hypnotherapy or meditations, breath work, all that kind of stuff that has been proven to rewire those pathways and shift that thinking maybe a little bit easier and quicker?
Whatever works. I think it's different for everybody, right? We're all either kinesthetic or visual or auditory. If I give somebody a coaching tool, for example, what might work for one person, I'll need to tweak it for the next client, right? Where, like, maybe some of the most fundamental basic things, we don't need to complicate self-help, right? It's like vision boards are great. Mantras are great. Affirmations are great. That can really help with our changing our thought patterns. But where one person, say they're very visual or high aesthetic, they're going to want to look at that mantra. Or maybe they're going to have pictures and it's going to be this beautiful wallpaper on their phone or whatever. If they're more auditory or kinesthetic, maybe they record themselves saying the new story, the new narrative, the one they don't believe yet, but we're going to grow into that belief and we're going to condition that like a muscle at the gym until it becomes the new normal. And so maybe we dance around and do a routine and videotape it and then we watch that, right? Or maybe it's reading aloud and we're listening to it. We all know people that are better reading a book or people that are better with Audible, right? So we're all different. So we can't just do one thing for everybody. And so in the same sense, I think these exercises like somatic, hypnotherapy, all of this, it's just wonderful that we have options. So people need to do what works for them.
Yes.
A lot of my clients, it's just as simple as the mantras and changing the thing. It also depends, we have to be patient with ourselves because it took, especially if you have a narrative that you've been telling yourself for years.
Yep.
It took a long time to get that narrative stuck in your head. And we don't know it's there until we do.
Yeah.
It's subconscious.
Yeah.
So, or these beliefs, right? Some of us have been living with these beliefs about ourselves and other people and the world and God and everything else since childhood. So when we have a light bulb moment and we change the narrative, we change the belief, we write it down, we do a routine, we do a mantra, we go to hypnotherapy, we go to a retreat and whatever we do to get that in our physiology, we've got to condition that. That's the action of it, because it took a long time for that old narrative to get written. So it will take time for the new one to take hold. So we don't just go to the gym one time and have beautiful biceps. We have to keep going over and over, condition, repeat, condition, repeat. So all of this is like that.
So
Right?
perseverance.
Be patient.
But also
Perseverance,
endurance.
grit. Take alcohol addiction, for example. Even though everything in us wanted to turn into a sober person, well, the first 30 days, your body is still, or 90 days or year, whatever it is for the individual, your body's still very uncomfortable with that change. So you're going to have a certain amount of grit to
Yes, I always
get
say
through
the
that.
first few months, like until you get to step 3, right? Really, it's where we turn it over and all, and we accept, this help, or maybe 2 you start to. I don't know. You're really doing it on your own. It's really your own willpower and the groups and everything that's helping you. You do have this other support. You're not completely on your own. But we know that, for the way I speak for myself, the way my program works is my higher power is keeping me sober. And the community and the fellowship and all the stuff. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, when nobody else is around, when I can't reach anybody on the phone, I can't get to a meeting, snowstorm, it's me and high power. It's me and God, right? And that's a great point, though, that you said before, is this what works for you is not going to work for everybody. But
That's right.
Figure out who you are, how you operate, how you learn, where you feel comfortable, where's your sweet spots, what are you not resistant toward, right? You don't need to find the resistance and then push through the resistance. If it's going to be easier for you to receive some kind of message and recondition over and over and over in a certain way, just do that. Just do that.
Right. And it's like we have all these different recovery groups too. We can't bash 12-step, and 12-step can't bash other groups.
Nope,
we
not at all.
have to we're all a big world full of lots of different people. We have different churches, different therapists, different self-help methods, different coaches. We have to have different recovery groups.
We're
and we
not
can't get hung up on labels and who calls himself alcoholic and who doesn't. That's not helpful. Sobriety in itself is a win. And we have all these things because we're all different.
However you're doing it, if it's working for you, keep doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And that might shift in time and in a different season. Roll with the changes.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what else? What else do you want to share with us? What are some good nuggets in your book? Is there anything that you want to say that we haven't touched on?
There's so much good stuff in there. I think people, whether you're, even if you're not in an active addiction, I've gotten great feedback from people of all ages, men and women. A lot of people have read it that don't have an addiction or aren't, searching for sobriety, so to speak. So and got a lot out of it. So
and number 4 in USA Today's list, a
4 for nonfiction. Yeah, I know. I was blown away. The list is 150, and I was hoping I'd make 150,
wow,
number 150, but it came in at 26 and 4 in nonfiction, and
amazing.
And
Chris.
so I was very happy. But as you know, it's a lot of work to get your message out there, because it's not about the list but the list helps the impact of the message, and the message is one that can save lives. So if you know somebody, what I'd say too is if you know somebody that's struggling with controlling thoughts or maybe feeling stuck, this is a good book for them. It's a good gift book for them.
And where can they get it?
Anywhere books are sold. Yep.
Everywhere.
I have an audiobook coming out in March as well.
Oh, great.
So,
Awesome. Are you the voice? Or
I am.
You're voice? Oh, good for you. Oh, so great to do that.
I got I won't say talked into narrating my own, but persuaded to do my own.
I think I don't know. I think it's always better. Nobody can say it like you can, because it's coming from you.
That's true. Yeah. And and it's my story. And so it's just funny because I listen to Audible. I read books all day long on my Audible. And nowadays it's so sophisticated. They have actors. Some of them, I listen to a lot of fiction, and they have these actors, like different, like maybe 6 actors in one book playing different roles.
I heard about that.
And here I am just reading my book.
That's pretty
by myself. It'll be great though. I think,
it'll be great. It's gonna
the production value is really good. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, where can people find you?
They can find me at chrisjanssencoaching.com. That's the best place to find me because I keep it updated with all my socials, what's going on. You can subscribe to my newsletter. You can, all the different places to buy my book are on there. It's, Barnes & Noble, Target, Books A Million, all the places. And then Chris3 Janssen is my Instagram, but
2 S's, not Janssen. Well, you'll see it in the title and everything, but
Janssen. Mm-hmm.
2 S's.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here with us, Chris. I hope I know our listeners got a lot out of everything that you shared. I'm so grateful for you, for the spirit moving you in a way to put these books out and to help people, because there are a lot of people who need a lot of help. And then in doing it, we heal even more, right? It's not
right.
It's for us too. So
well, and I want to say thank you for doing a podcast because it's a lot of work and you're serving a lot of people, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I love doing it. It's one of my favorite things to do. I love people. I love connecting. I love talking to new people, learning new things. I love exposing listeners to new people. I'm just like I'm a natural connector. I've always, I think I set up 2 of my friends with their husbands. Like I've just always, I don't know, the Clubhouse. I like to bring people together.
It's in one of your natural gifts for sure.
It is.
Yeah. Well, and thank you for the Clubhouse. It's in the acknowledgments page.
I did see that.
Thank you. And I mean, we wouldn't have a Clubhouse without you and my friends at the Castle Rock Clubhouse in Colorado for your ears, presence, attention, and acceptance. You model the meaning of grace yourself.
Aww.
And we wouldn't have that Clubhouse without you and Jim and your girls get
and
things
other people. I was the caboose. I was the little engine that kept pushing it along. We had 6 other board members who one did legal, one did the website. A couple of them were really great for credibility in terms of getting the rest of the community that was already here on board. So we all played a part, but I am going to take a little bit of credit in terms of like showing up and being like, oh, we got to do this. Like, we got to do this. This is happening, by hook or by crook, this thing is happening. So I miss you, and let me know next time you're back in town.
Oh, for sure. And if you are in Southern California, make sure you call me.
I will. All right, Chris, I love you. I'll talk to you soon.
Love you too. Bye.